Welcome to the Spring 2022 Children's Book Authors and Illustrators panel at the BookFest. My name is Lucia Matuonto, and I'm a children's book author and the host of the Relatable Voice podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. So today we are meeting with amazing children's authors and illustrators. So Andy is an international children's book illustrator and cartoonist for book publishers, record labels, and magazines. So welcome, Andy. So the next one is Isabel. Isabel Cintra. She is the award-winning author of The Sweetest Ladybug and other children's books. So, dear Isabel, welcome to the BookFest.
Yes, hi everyone. Very happy to be here today. Thank you, Lucia. We go on.
Thank you, Isabel. So, next we have Isabel's brother, Zeca Cintra. Zeca is a Brazilian illustrator with a degree in plastic arts from School of Education. So, Zeca, bem-vindo.
Obrigado, Lúcia. Hi. Thank you.
Thank you too. And last but certainly not least, we have Stephen Joseph. Stephen is the author of Snoodles, Kidoodles, Poodles, and lots of noodles. So welcome, Stephen.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, it's my pleasure. So let's first start with discussing what makes a good children's book. So Andy, let's start with you. What are your thoughts on this?
I think a children's book's really hard to write because you need to be interesting to two completely opposite age groups. It needs to be interesting to the parent who's reading it, and it also needs to be interesting to the child who's enjoying it, who's having that connection with the parent. So there's certain things that need to be included in the book for children to learn to read, to understand. I think there needs to be a real mesh between the words and the illustrations, because the child is going to assimilate the information and understand the context of the words. So if the pictures are all messed up and jumbled, or the words are all messed up and jumbled, it's going to be hard to create connections. I also think that the words need to flow, because if a parent is reading the book and struggling, we can't guarantee that all parents know how to read a book or how to speak out loud. So if it doesn't flow and it's quite truncated, then a parent might struggle to convey it to a child, and the child will sense that the adult is maybe not engaging with the story, it's a bit flat, and that will sometimes affect how the child engages with the story. I know when I've worked on Stephen's books, the words flow really nicely, it's really easy to read, and then the humour comes out because the parents get the humour. I think if a children's book has those elements in it, it's always going to be a success, and it's always going to be read time and time again.
Very good. And actually, I agree. I definitely agree. And what do you think, Isabel?
Lucia, I believe in stories that we like to stay thinking about them until the time when you go to sleep. One time, because when you go to the bed, we go to sleep and we stay thinking about that story. Stories that still the creativity in children. I always think like it's very nice when I can write stories, when I bring fantasy, so funny things. And I like José Carlos, the illustrations, because he always brings he surprised me a lot with humor in the characters. This is great. But I also like to bring values, because nowadays we need to have that. I didn't have that when I was child. Everything was very simple, the stories. I didn't have nothing like me, like representation, for example. And this is our goal now, mine and Zeca. We want to bring this representativeness in the children books. And I think the parents, they like that, because they can have fun and they can teach the children something important to their life. And it's funny also when I think about when I buy books for my children, and they see some detail with them, something reminding them, some connection. When they see connection in the story with them, they like more. They see things like food, some food they eat, they know, some recipe they know. Oh, mama, this is here in the story. This connection is also important. Have things. I think this is really interesting and important. I believe in this sort of stories.
Great. And what about you? Just a second, please, because my computer just shut down and I had to restart it. So just 1 second. So, Zeca, now I'll ask Zeca. Zeca, na sua opinião, o que faz com que um livro seja bom?
Ai, Lúcia, na minha opinião, o que faz um livro ser bom é ele, a cada página virada, surpreender o seu leitor, né? Obviamente, um bom texto, uma boa história, bons personagens. E as histórias são variadas, desde histórias mais complexas a histórias mais simples. E o mais importante do livro é a verdade que ele carrega, né? Acho que um livro sendo verdadeiro, ele vai ter muito sucesso.
Yes, that's correct, and I agree with Zeka said. So he said that is, in his opinion, the most important is that the children can learn something from his books, the book, and also that the truth is very important. So is basically what he wants to say. And now I have another question, which is, as an author, how do you explain an illustrator your vision? Let's start with Isabel.
My experience is based in only one illustrator. Zeca is my brother. He is the only one who makes the illustrations to my books. And I think it's very interesting because we are brothers, and I see this like immense joy. I can work with him because we were playing together when we were a child. Our childhood was together when he did start to draw. He was very small. He was like 6 years old when he started to make drawings, and everyone was telling, but he did this. Yeah, but he's only 6 years old. How he could it? Then I was there in all this time with him, playing, having meals together. And now we work together. And I know in her professional way how it works in my histories. And the one thing I like very much is this surprise he always bring when I give the history to him, and then he comes with something more than I was expecting. And then this is, I think, all the writers, they like to see that when we see, wow, but this is more than what I wrote. It's like another. He can make another story based in my writing, and this is great. Many times I did change something because his illustrations. I did add some detail because the illustration came different, and this was more rich for the story. I love his illustrations. I know he's he's my brother and sister, but I need to tell, it's very colorful, and of course, I am happy when the readers, they say, "Oh, your story is great," but also when they say about the illustrations. And they all say, everyone, they say that when they say something good about story, they also come and telling a lot of things about the illustrations, also great, so colorful, and the details. We can speak together when we are trying to arrive in some point, like some things I like, some things he prefers. And then now we are getting older. We have more patience to each other and to work together. Then this is my answer.
And it must be very interesting to work with your brother, don't you think?
Yes, is now when we have seven books already, and I need to tell, we start to be more and more professional. Because before, I remember, it was difficult sometimes when we arrive in some point. I prefer like this, and he preferred another way. And then I say, but I am the writer. And then he said, but I am the illustrator. I know this is better if you is like that. And then we were getting in some complicated. I am lion in the
Your astral sign.
and I like to control it a bit. But now we start really is good when we speak. We can have some meeting, and then we start to discuss. And then he says, or I say, okay, I will sleep and I will think about this. We can continue tomorrow. And another day we really like. I say, okay, I agree with you. You really should be like that, or he agree with me. I think more and more easier with the years passing, we start to be easier, and is great. Thank you, Zeca Cintra.
That's beautiful. Zeca, she only talked good things about you. Ela só falou coisas boas de você. And very good. Thank you, Isabel. And Stephen, same question. What do you look for when choosing an illustrator to collaborate with?
Well, I looked for Andy. I found Andy, and but I didn't know Andy's name. So I have two books. First is the Last Surviving Dinosaur, and then this both Andy did. But the first book, I had no idea about children's books. I just wrote a story and reached out to a couple publishers, and then it was Mascot Books, and they gave me about 75 different illustrators to look at stuff, and then I get to pick the three I like the best, and then they gave me more material, the three I like the best, and out of those three I liked Andy the best. So I picked Andy, and Andy did this amazing job on my first book, and I never even got to interact with Andy. I had to go through Mascot. So the second time around, I wrote directly to Andy. Andy, I have another book. Could you do it for me? And Andy said, sure, I'll do it. And basically, Andy, he makes everything more fun. I never get disappointed, and a lot of times I get almost teary-eyed. Andy sends me a picture. It's you don't get all the pictures all at once. Like here's one, here's another, and it's like a present. It's like Christmas every other week or every other day when Andy sends me something. It's a very exciting experience. And then the only problem I never could put it together. Okay, how does that fit in the story? And then to come all together, and it works, and that it's like magic. So Andy is my magician. It's just amazing, and it's a lot of fun.
That's amazing. And wow, Andy, out of 75, did you know that it was that competitive?
No, that was a shock to me. I didn't realize that it was out of 75, so I feel quite chuffed myself, to be honest. But Stephen's books are great. They offer you something completely different every time. So I really enjoy illustrating them.
Yes, and Zeca, o Steve falou que o Andy ele foi escolhido entre 75 ilustradores. Você sabia que esse mercado era tão competitivo?
Sim, eu sabia, e eu também tenho uma história muito interessante, que o meu primeiro livro em Portugal, Lisboa, Eu fui selecionado entre 150. Então eu sei a emoção que é. É incrível você, no meio de tantos ilustradores bons, você ser o escolhido. Então é algo inexplicável. É algo inexplicável, porque você sempre fica pensando nos outros, o que eles fizeram, não é? E o que você fez para você ter conseguido alcançar o primeiro posto. Portanto, mas é aquela tal história, Lúcia, é uma coisa assim muito especial essa questão do autor escolher o ilustrador, né? É o que chega no coração do autor.
Uhum.
Então, para nós ilustradores, quando a gente é o escolhido, é o maior dos prêmios. Acho que a gente faz aquele projeto, aquele livro com uma energia, com uma força tão grande do fato, né, da gente ter sido escolhido dentre tantos outros bons ilustradores, mas o que chega é a emoção. Acho que a emoção, acho que quando você faz um trabalho que você carrega todas as suas emoções, acho que dificilmente você não vai conseguir pegar aquele projeto. Acho que o próprio ilustrador já sente que aquele trabalho dele é bom quando ele carrega muita emoção no trabalho. Portanto, é uma emoção que eu já passei por essa emoção e é incrível. É até difícil de explicar. É até difícil de explicar. É incrível.
Obrigada. So basically, Zeka knew that it was a very competitive market. He was chosen between 150 illustrators for his first book. And what he says that after he was chosen, his emotion was so huge that he did the work with even more energy and love, passion. So that's basically what Zeka said. And I believe that it happens to also it happened with you, yes, Andy.
Yeah, it is a very competitive market being a children's book illustrator, and you can be flooded with work for 2-3 months and think everything's going great, and then you don't hear anything at all for 7 months. It's like, well, that was my career. I enjoyed it. I'm now going back to work in a shop. But yeah.
Yes. So thank you. And as an author, how do you explain to an illustrator your vision? Let's go, Isabel. Can you tell me how do you do it?
Yeah, normally I like to always when I finish the writings, I like my mother to read that, and Zeka is the second one to read it. Even before he started to make illustrations for me, the first history, the first story I did, the first writing I always send to him. And nowadays is the same. I send and I always expect we see how he will interpret, he will do, what he will send back to me, the illustrations. And the most of the times is great, is very intense. He have too much sensibility, and I like that. But when it's quite difficult to explain, we always have occasions together, and many times we can sit together, and I can make some. I show in a paper also what I mean, or what I want to mean when I told that, or the colors, or the type of the hair. We go. I think it's very important to me, like author, explain the details is very important for me. Many times we start to have discussions about the type of the clothes, for example. And I tell, but it's not. I didn't think very well. Was not exactly what I thought. And then he tells, but what about this? Then we can see in this way or in that way. Is really a lot of discussion. We need to speak a lot. Many times we cannot arrive in a conclusion, because I like to. It's very important for me to. I want to see the illustrator happy with my vision also, because I don't want to have a discussion when he says something and I just disagree. I like to give a chance to see, okay, then let me see what you mean with this. Send me something different tomorrow, and then I will see. We can discuss again. And we try to have this 50-50 because I like to have the illustrator working happy. And then I will can have a better results in the end. And I now I can tell I am satisfied, and I think you can ask him, but I think he's also satisfied because the stories he always tell me also his opinion about the story is important for me, like brother and like professional. I like when he's really honest and tell if he can criticize, of course, in the positive and negative way. I always will accept, and we will sit again and discuss. For me, it's important we have this. Can get some time, can be like 3 days, 1 week discussing, but it's very important because when you have the book ready, uh, then we no way, it's done, it's printed, we don't have more chance. And this is great. This is the way we do, we discuss a lot to try to fit my vision with his illustration, with his ideas.
Wonderful. Can I show you your book cover again? Can I see your book cover again?
Yes,
And the illustration.
colors for me is very important, and for him too. I know that. And
Beautiful.
yes, it's strange we being like in this side because I never know if I am more.
No, but I can see it.
Yes, I love it. I love it. I love
It's
everything.
beautiful.
Yes.
Zeca did a good job. Muito bom, muito bonito,
Muito
Zeca, que o
obrigado,
seu
gente.
trabalho.
Obrigado.
Muito. And now, Stephen, this is for you now. How do you explain to Andy? How did you explain to Andy your vision? What do you want? What kind of illustrations you want for your book?
Well, what I do get put up my story into story blocks, and I do describe at least what I'm thinking. It would be interesting. The only funny thing is that I have a feeling that if I said nothing at all, Andy would get everything right. I wouldn't even have. He knows he could just go into my head. But I write a story that by itself is somewhat ridiculous, and then when I describe what I want, I try to how do I amplify certain parts of for the illustrator to make it as ridiculous as possible, and then Andy comes back and brings back the ridiculous to me, and sometimes I see Andy's picture. Oh, we could do this more and make it even more ridiculous. What I want, and it was great. I gave my book to my friend's daughter, and they went on vacation. She had it every single day. I want the book to be the kind of book that you could even go to different pages. It has to be a book that you want to read over and over and over and over again. It's not like read once and put it down. It has to be like it becomes your friend. And each page and these illustrations become a friend in a way. Like it's a world. Every page is a different world. And Andy just does a great job. But like what I really want to see how it would work if I just said nothing at all. I know Andy would get everything right, that's what makes Andy such a great illustrator.
Yes, I saw the illustrations of your book, and I really agree that Andy did a great job. And now let's hear from our illustrators. So Zeca and Andy, as an illustrator, what does your process look like? For example, where do you start? let's start with Zeca. Zeca, we can start with you. How is your creation process? Como você começa a criar as suas ilustrações? De onde? Como é que acontece isso?
Lúcia, eu desenho desde muito pequeno, desde os 6 anos, a pré-escola. E a minha paixão sempre foi criar. Eu sempre tive os meus heróis, Batman, Superman. Eu sempre apreciei muito os desenhos do Disney, só que eu queria criar os meus próprios desenhos. Eu sempre gostei de criar os meus próprios heróis. Então eu criava os meus heróis, os meus personagens infantis. E tem um determinado momento da minha vida, eu sou 2 anos mais velho que a Isabel. E eu devia ter ali os meus 11 anos, e ela devia ter os seus 9 anos. E a Isabel sempre gostou de escrever. E ela começou a interagir com os meus desenhos, colocando os balões de fala, né, as palavras. E eu percebi o quanto as palavras eram importantes para o meu trabalho, porque até então eu só desenhava, né? E é muito interessante que depois a gente também, olhando a história do mundo, que o que chega primeiro, né, são as imagens, né? Os homens das cavernas, que eles desenhavam, não existia a palavra, não existia a palavra, só existia o desenho. Então se comunicavam, se faziam tudo através dos desenhos. E aí depois, obviamente, é incorporada a palavra, né, na nossa vida. Então é um casamento perfeito. E para o meu trabalho, o texto é muito importante. Então quando chega para mim textos muito bem escritos, o meu trabalho até fica muito mais fácil, sinceramente. Agora, existem vários tipos de textos. Existem os textos bem escritos, existem aqueles textos mais simples, e existem outros textos que têm personagens incríveis, né? Então, cada escritor escreve de uma maneira e aquilo chega para nós, ilustradores, como algo, quando nos toca, né? Quando esse texto nos toca, seja pelo texto, seja pela simplicidade, ou seja pelos personagens, isso nos deixa completamente cheios de inspiração, né? Então, para mim, o meu processo criativo, acho que, para mim, a minha matéria-prima é o texto. É óbvio que depois, com a criatividade, né, que eu tenho, para mim fica muito fácil dar forma a essas palavras. Para mim é muito fácil. Às vezes as pessoas... Eu pego um texto, eu faço a impressão do texto, e quando eu já vou lendo a história, eu já vou desenhando em cima da história. Então, muitas vezes... Não sei se eu tenho aqui alguma coisa. Então, muitas vezes, os desenhos, eles saem em cima dos textos, né? Então, e quando eu vejo, eu já criei todo um livro, né? Ou seja, o texto me toca de uma tal maneira que ali naquele momento eu não preciso de muito tempo para ficar fazendo a leitura dele, né? Então, para mim, o meu processo criativo, assim, que me inspira muito são as palavras. São as palavras. Eu sou muito grato a todos os autores que eu trabalho, a minha irmã em especial, a Isabel. É um prazer trabalhar com ela. E os meus outros autores também, né? Seja de Portugal, seja do Brasil, de qualquer parte do mundo. Quando esse material, quando esses textos chegam em minhas mãos, é como um presente.
Muito bom, adorei a sua explicação. So, Zeca just said that since he was a kid, he always enjoyed creating his own characters and superheroes. He was, I think, 6 years old when he started drawing, and his expertise was never to write the story, but instead interpreting the text. For him, the text is very important. So when he first starts, he reads the story and transforms those words into illustrations. And he usually receives a variety of manuscripts, and some of them are very well written. Others have awesome characters, and others are very simple. But they all have something in common. They are done to from amazing authors, and then he starts reading and gets very inspired. Also, he said something that I really love is that he said that all starts with the illustrations. Since we were living in the caves like before Christ, in those times, they started with the illustrations, and then people started writing and discovering how to write. So basically, he is inspired by the text. So, Andy, what is your opinion about it?
What the process of creating a book? I've always used a three-step process. If anyone's just starting out looking to illustrate books, you can use a three-step process as a guide to help you with all different publishers. They will generally want some kind of adaptation of this. So I'll start with the characters. If we take Snoodles for an example, the new book, we had the characters of Herbie Snoodleman and Sarah Krudelman. And they had to be opposites, but they both had to live in the same world. So I did a lot of kind of research into what would this character look like. If he's creating a Snoodlemobile, there will be certain parts of his character that will be prominent. We need to make the reader know immediately he's an intelligent guy, he's a successful guy, but he's also got a little bit of a quirk about him. And then once I've nailed the principal characters, then I can start creating the world around him. And that's when we start doing some rough characters. So generally you'll do the characters first, then you'll do a rough guide where you can see, is there any different changes before I start colouring? And then you go on to the final colour. So it's a three-step process. However, for Snoodles, I did it slightly differently because I created everything from scratch. Everything you've seen in the Snoodles has been individually designed and then all put together to create the world. Especially something like the art studio with Pierre, the art restorer. I've been designing individual cans, individual brushes, creating modern art out of Noodles. So research is really important. I think I did virtual tours of museums because I needed to create a noodle museum. So I had to put a lot of effort in at the start. So the pictures didn't even come together for ages because I was creating each individual bit, adding more, creating more. But you see the effect when it all starts coming into colour and you go, right, this will get the kids' imaginations firing. Because like Stephen said, he wants people to read the book again and again. So I started putting in little joke things. Have you ever seen Where's Wally? The kind of books like that, where there's lots of little incidental detail that you only see the seventh or eighth time you've read it. We had things like there's a mayor who opens up the cafe and opens up the Noodles thing. So what we did is we put a mayoral race. There was a race going on. She was up for election. So there was posters all over the book in all different pages of her and her opponent. And these are things that will get the kids noticing it and then looking for the rest of them, almost like a game within itself. So I went well over the kind of time budget that I had because I was adding all these things in. But usually in 6 weeks, you go from creating the characters to final colours, and in 6 weeks it's done. But it took months to do Snoodles. It was so big.
Wow. So it was very interesting to have these two different perspectives on this, but it's all about creation, and that's so amazing to be able to create such a beautiful characters from just the scratch. Yes, as you said. And my next question will be for everyone. Isabel, what's the most challenging aspect when it comes to creating stories and illustrations for children?
Okay, I feel children like very demanding readers. Even before the pandemic, me and Zeca, we were making readings, and in schools in Brazil, we had this great opportunity when we were on vacation there, and they ask about everything. They want to know the process of writing. They want to know the process about illustration, and from when became the idea, why I wrote this, what they really they are really interested, and they really take attention about everything in the history. This is why they really deserve respect and care when we are writing, and when this writing will be intended for them. This is important to tell. And for me, the most difficult because of this is when I want to bring some values, and when I want to speak about delicate issues, important issues for children, for parents. But I need to find the appropriate way to tell this story, to seduce parents and children in that way. This is not easy path. Find this way to speak about such issues. This is sometimes is my difficulties, to be honest to you. And I also like when my children can read. I read to them the story. Christina and Carolina, I have two girls, and they can read in Portuguese too. This is interesting. But they will tell mama, but what means this, or means that. Sometimes find the good expression to tell difficult issues, to bring difficult themes. This is for me the big challenge. Sometimes we need to write and rewrite and think best, speak with another children, because the teachers, they are also interested in bring something easy, some important issue where they like to teach children, but they also want a nice way, easy way to seduce all the children, to make them interested in story. This is my difficulty sometimes. But until now, we are going on. Zeka helped me a lot. Because sometimes this is interesting. The illustrator, he can help with the illustration. Even when you write something, the illustration can show something different, something who can have two sort of meanings. This can help a lot too. This is what I think about this.
And it's not easy to write for kids. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, exactly. It's not too. It seems like, oh, she's a children writer, but it's not so easy. We need to. No, it's not to. They are more demanding because we need to think. This go to schools. The parents, they will read this. Children will learn the things I'm writing, and they will bring that message to the other friends. What I wrote to them. This is my challenge because I want to bring this sort of issues about racism, about respect about each other, and then I need to be trick when I am writing about this. Until now, we are good, making a good job, and we are happy. It's working.
Yes, I'm happy about that. Thank you, Isabel. And now, Andy, what is the challenging part about creating illustrations for a children's book?
There's a lot of challenging aspects to doing it. I think if you have an author that is quite decisive, that really helps an illustrator, someone who really knows their mind, because as soon as you tune in to what they are thinking, you can get a lot of momentum. As soon as you go, that character's nailed, you can start seeing the rest of it. So that's not exactly the most challenging aspect of it, but being organized as you're going through the process from an illustrator's point of view is really important. So I use things like version control. So I'll do a design and then the author's not quite sure. And then I maybe do 5 or 6 other designs. And then after they've gone on that process, they might decide that the first one was the one actually that really worked. They just need to see the rest to understand that the first one was it. So if you've got really good version control in place, you can just go straight back to the first one without having to go, where is it? What have I done with it? And this is really important when you're on a work plan. I sometimes do simultaneous books. At the moment, I'm illustrating 4 different books at the same time, which can be really problematic. So if I have a work plan, then I can go, right, this this day I will be working on this book, and therefore I can get my mind into, at the moment it's Cessna planes, those little biplanes. So I've had to research into Cessna planes, get my mindset into those characters, and that can be really difficult if you're constantly swapping. So if you're a professional illustrator and you are doing multiple work, which you need to survive, you ultimately need to make sure that you can compartmentalize your work. And that's where version control comes in really well. But also, as you become more nuanced in doing it, you'll realize there are certain colors that maybe don't work for a children's audience. I've definitely found that certain fonts I've used, I've had to redo the work because these fonts are italic and children just can't read them. I've used pastel colors and children can't see them very well, and I've had to change them for more bright colors. This influences your practice moving on. And also things like logos. So if you're using a Coca-Cola logo or an Apple logo, things like that, these are all copyright controlled. So it could mean that you have to completely redo an image if you've included an Apple logo. So you have to kind of have some nuance about how this book is going to be released, how it's going to be viewed, not just by the people reading it, the author, the publishers, but also other people that may have a connection to it. And that's quite difficult because you are in a very short time scale. 6 weeks is not long to turn around a book.
Okay, good, thank you. Now I'm going to ask Zeca, qual é a parte mais, digamos assim, difícil que você acha que seja para fazer uma ilustração ou escrever um livro para crianças?
A parte mais difícil... Nossa... Deixa eu pegar aqui alguma coisa aqui que eu... algum livro... Acho que a parte mais difícil quando a gente pega um livro, quando a gente inicia com nós ilustradores, pelo menos para mim, assim, é estar bem disposto para pegar esse material, não é? Acho que a gente tem que estar muito bem disposto para iniciar qualquer projeto. E acho que a maior dificuldade é essa, acho que é a falta de entusiasmo, acho que é a falta de ideias. Acho que, para mim, produzir um livro é como produzir um filme, não é? E a gente, às vezes, assiste vários filmes, né? Tem filmes bons, mais ou menos, e aqueles filmes incríveis. E a gente percebe que aqueles filmes incríveis, acho que são aqueles que os diretores mais colocam a sua emoção, não é? Mais colocam o coração. Então, para mim, um livro para mim é isso. Então, eu quando inicio o processo de um livro, a primeira coisa que eu procuro é estar muito bem fresco, é estar muito bem tranquilo, muito bem disposto, muito bem alimentado, né? Tanto espiritualmente quanto com proteínas, não é? Para que o projeto saia muito bem feito, porque é muito ruim você criar algo sem uma energia boa, sabe? Então é preferível você descansar, ficar tranquilo na sua e esperar um próximo projeto. Apesar de que é muito difícil, né? No mundo capitalista que a gente vive, a gente não pode ficar dispensando trabalho. Então, acho que, Lúcia, acho que o maior desafio é esse. Acho que o maior desafio é a gente estar preparado, para a produção. Acho que quando a gente está preparado, acho que o trabalho flui de uma maneira muito tranquila, muito objetiva. Eu tenho muitas experiências, né, de livros, tanto com a minha irmã quanto com outros autores, e todos os trabalhos que eu comecei muito bem disposto, eles fluíram de uma maneira incrível. Então, acho que para mim o maior desafio, acho que é esse, sabe? Acho que é estar cheio de mim mesmo, é estar muito bem preparado, né, nutrido, e tocar o trabalho até o final.
Ai, adorei isso. So let me try to translate it in a good way. So Zeca said that the most important, or let's say the challenging for him, is to be with energy, motivation, because he believes that writing a book or making illustrations is the same like when a film director is directing a movie or is writing the plot. So he needs to have motivation, he needs to be eating well, doing exercises, and of course, it's not that he's going to tell to an author, no, I cannot get this work because I'm not really energetic. But for him, it's very, very important to be extremely motivated. So this is the only challenging, but the rest is everything fine. So now, Stephen, thank you, Zach. I love your
Oh,
explanation. And
obrigado, Lúcia.
Stephen, can I see your book again? And I will ask you to answer our questions about the challenges. Okay, beautiful.
Beautiful.
So the challenge is actually I find it more a challenge to write for grown-ups. Because I also have this book, Grown-Up Guide to Effective Crankiness, the Crankosaurus Method. But I'm a lawyer by day. That's my profession. And I'm actually, when I'm writing, it's as if I'm trying to win a case. So I have to make a case and win the case, that sort of thing. And in my grown-up guide, my last chapter is the 5 steps of effective crankiness. And the last part I said is it's important to marvel. People don't marvel. I talk about like a little child listening to a seashell, and it's amazing. Wow, and grown-ups don't do that enough. Kids get it. So the thing is, when I create a story for a children's book, I can't get caught up with one point. I have to keep putting together all different sorts of points and make sure that they work together to tell a story that real like the hook. If I'm making a case, and like with attorneys, they sometimes they focus on so many different details that people get lost. Like if I'm talking to a jury, the jurors will get lost. I want to give them hooks to hook onto. So that makes it easier. So I don't have to know as much. I don't have to explain as much, but I amplify. And it's easy to do with a kid's book. And then putting things together. And do I have enough amplifications within the story itself that the kids could get hooked onto bit by bit by bit? So, but sometimes I could get caught up in one point. I fall in love with one point, and I can't fall too much in love with that. And it's fun. I'm also a runner, so I go running at like 2 hours every morning. Go running, and that's where the ideas come in my head. And sometimes, again, I have the same cycle where, like, I love the conversation with some characters in a story, and I just let them speak. But sometimes I just keep saying the same thing, and I want them to say something different. So I guess that's the challenge: keep putting all things together that it comes in one fun package for a kid at the end of the day.
Very well said. Thank you. And now I would like to ask you something that is our last question. So, Andy, what do you think the future of children's books looks like? What do you think?
Well, I always think that's a really hard question, because the book is more than just the experience of reading the book. For me, it's the closeness of the relationship between the parent and the child reading it. It's things like the smell of the book and the noise it makes when you open a new book. These are all things that are the whole children's book reading experience. So I'm not sure how the future can change that. you're not going to change it with tablets and PCs because of all that artificial light. So kids won't be able to get to sleep, and that's kind of like a developmental issue. So I think the future will be more people will have access to be able to write and publish their own books, taking maybe away from publishers and having to have a publisher. I think I can see that's the way to go. And so there'll be more voices. Isabel made a really great point about needing a lot more diverse voices within publishing. And I think this is going to start coming from the people themselves actively making their own audience as opposed to having to find a publisher. I think some kind of innovation will happen in that area. But I hope the experience of reading a book with a child and having that closeness and those kind of auditory and visual experiences maintained, because that's for me is the love of doing it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Andy. And Isabel, what do you think about the future of our books, children's books?
Yes, thinking about the future about the children books, I really want and believe that in the future the children books they will be more easy and accessible to all the children. I see, like in the richest countries, for example, children books they are essential asset. I see here Sweden, like when my first child, she did 1 years old. She got a lot of books. I never have seen that before. I never had this when I was child. Like 1 years old, like 15 books. Wow, this is great. And I hope this is becoming more and more. I hope so too. And in countries when have more social inequalities, like Brazil, for example, I hope we can have this sort of lucky too, to have this to be more accessible for the children around the world, to be easier to the books arrive to them. Is still very difficult. I hope in the future we can get better in this way.
Yeah, me too. I'm from Brazil and I know what do you mean.
Exactly. This is what I hope. This is what I believe. And yes, if we think together about this, why not?
Uhum. Thank you, Isabel. Now, Zeca, vou te perguntar, o que que você acha que vai ser o futuro dos livros? O que que vai acontecer no futuro?
Eu acho que, em termos de evolução, eu sempre procuro ver com relação à música, né? Na música a gente começou com o vinil, depois a gente passou para o CD, e hoje em dia a gente compra as músicas, né, na internet, né? A gente baixa os ficheiros, hoje em dia já é tudo digital. E os livros, obviamente, começaram ali, né, no papel, depois, obviamente, passou também para o digital, não é? E, sinceramente, eu vejo um mercado sempre em expansão. Eu e a Isabel, a gente tem visitado muitas feiras, né? A gente ainda não conseguiu visitar a Feira de Bolonha, né, aqui na Itália, mas a gente provavelmente no próximo ano quer visitar essa feira. E eu vejo crescimento, Lúcia. Eu vejo que é um mercado que ele, obviamente, ele todos os anos ele evolui. O mercado dos livros, principalmente o livro infantil, ele tem essa evolução, e eu acredito que os temas também, hoje em dia a gente tem muito mais temas para as crianças, né, temas diversos, né, e eu acredito que ainda teremos muito mais temas, né, diversos, e eu acredito muito, né, que o livro, que as crianças, acho que do mundo inteiro, né, hoje em dia a gente percebe que não chega a todas, mas eu acredito que os livros, num certo momento, acho que todas as crianças do planeta vão conseguir ter um livro infantil, vão conseguir ler um livro infantil. Eu acredito muito nisso.
Obrigada, Zeca, se Deus quiser. So, Zeca sees a growing in the book marketing, and also he hopes that kids from developing countries can be able to have access to these books, to children's books, because he believes he has a positive thought about it. And please, Stephen, what do you think? What is your opinion?
Well, I love what Isabel and what Zeka said on that. With I grew up in the South Bronx. It was not. I didn't come from a third world country, but a third world neighborhood. South Bronx, and I never had books like that as a kid. I actually got into it with my daughter. I loved reading kid books. My daughter, we would go to Barnes and Nobles and we could sit for hours. We go to the library, sit for hours, and I would come home and we'd get books and reading those books at night before she would go to bed. And I just hope that with computers that people still have the hardcover book, because I just, even though with this book Andy would send me pictures and I just see it on the computer, I see it on my phone and I'm falling in love with it. I get the whole book and wow, this is great, but it's still not the experience of getting the hardcover book, the physical thing that you hold in your hand. It makes such more of a greater impression that it comes into your world as something more passing just on the computer. So that's my hope, that people still holds on to that physical, tangible book, that they could have a bookshelf, that bookshelves still exist like 30 years from now. So that's my hope.
Thank you, Stephen. So you all have such different backgrounds, which makes for such different perspective. With it's so insightful to a viewer, and I'm sure a lot of people who are trying to work in this industry will benefit greatly from the thoughts you've shared today. So I want to say thank you. That's all the time we have for today. I would like to thank our amazing guests for joining us at this year's Spring 2022 Children's Books Authors and Illustrations panel. Andy, Isabel, Zeka, and Stephen, thank you again for sharing your insights.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been such an interesting discussion. And thank you to the BookFest and Desiree Duffy for organizing this. And finally, thank you all for watching. Thank you.